The world watched in horror on, as Israeli airstrikes rained down on Rafah, a densely populated city in the Gaza Strip. The strikes, part of Israel's ongoing conflict with Hamas, resulted in a devastating loss of life, with Palestinians, including children, confirmed dead and many more injured. The images emerging from Rafah, a city already scarred by years of conflict, painted a grim picture of destruction and despair. Homes were reduced to rubble, hospitals overwhelmed, and families torn apart. The international community swiftly condemned the airstrikes, with many world leaders expressing outrage and calling for an immediate ceasefire. The United Nations Secretary General described the incident as utterly appalling, while the European Union's foreign policy chief called for an immediate end to the violence and a resumption of meaningful negotiations. The strikes on Rafah marked a significant escalation in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, pushing the region further into turmoil and raising fears of a wider conflagration. The incident also brought into sharp focus the humanitarian crisis unfolding in Gaza. With its infrastructure already decimated by years of conflict and blockade, Gaza is ill-equipped to handle a crisis of this magnitude. The influx of casualties has overwhelmed the already strained healthcare system, while the destruction of homes has left thousands displaced and in desperate need of shelter, food, and water. The international community has pledged millions in aid, but the situation on the ground remains dire. The Rafah tragedy serves as a stark reminder of the human cost of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. As the world grapples with the aftermath of the strikes, the need for a just and lasting peace has never been more urgent. The international response to the Rafah airstrikes was swift and condemnatory, with world leaders from across the globe expressing outrage and calling for an immediate ceasefire. The United States, a staunch ally of Israel, found itself in a particularly delicate position, balancing its support for Israel's right to self-defense with the imperative to condemn the loss of innocent lives. In a carefully worded statement, the President expressed deep concern over the civilian casualties in Rafah, while also reiterating Israel's right to defend itself against Hamas rocket attacks. The European Union, a major donor to the Palestinian Authority, strongly condemned the airstrikes, calling them disproportionate and unacceptable. European Commission President urged Israel to exercise maximum restraint and to ensure the protection of civilians, while also calling for an end to Hamas rocket fire. The United Nations Security Council held an emergency meeting to discuss the situation in Gaza, but failed to agree on a joint statement due to opposition from the United States, which has veto power on the council. Arab and Muslim majority countries also condemned the airstrikes, with many accusing Israel of war crimes. Turkish president, a vocal critic of Israel, called the strikes a massacre and accused Israel of state terrorism. The Arab League held an emergency summit, where leaders called for an end to the violence and urged the international community to take concrete steps to protect Palestinian civilians. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, condemned the airstrikes as barbaric and called for an international investigation into the incident. The widespread condemnation of the Rafah airstrikes underscored the growing international isolation of Israel and the increasing frustration with the lack of progress in resolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.